Hey guys, tonight we are going somewhere quiet, somewhere secluded. Imagine a town nestled so deep in a forgotten valley that it feels like a secret kept by the mountains themselves. The air is clean, the people are kind, and life moves at the gentle pace of a meandering stream. It's the perfect escape. But as you settle in, a strange collective habit begins to surface, a shared behavior so unnatural, so pervasive, that it turns the idyllic escape into a slow-burning nightmare. This is the story of a place where a simple, instinctual human action is forbidden. A place where looking up is a sin. The true horror here isn't a monster hiding in the closet. It's the chilling reality of what an entire community will do to avoid the attention of a terror that hides in plain sight, in the vast open sky above their heads. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The road that leads you there isn't on any modern map. It's a thin gray ribbon of asphalt that splits from a neglected state highway, a turnoff you only take because you're tired of the endless, monotonous drone of the interstate. You're looking for a detour, a moment of authenticity in a world that feels increasingly plastic. The sign for Havenwood is weathered wood, the letters carved and painted a forest green that has faded to the color of moss. The road winds deeper into a valley flanked by dense pine and whispering aspen, the mountains rising on either side like ancient sleeping giants. The air cools. The sunlight, filtered through the thick canopy, becomes dappled and soft. You feel the city slough off your shoulders with every mile. This is what you were looking for, and then you see it. Havenwood. It's more charming than you could have possibly imagined. The town unfurls along the banks of a clear, fast-running creek. The houses are a mix of sturdy timber frame and riverstone construction, smoke curling lazily from their chimneys. Gardens overflow with late-season blooms, and the sound of wind chimes mixes with the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer. It's a postcard from a time you thought was long gone. You park your car on the main street and decide to stay, a few days at least. A sign for the Hearthside Inn swings gently in the breeze, and you feel a sense of profound peace settle over you. You take a walk before checking in, just to soak it all in. The air smells of pine needles and damp earth. People you pass offer a small, genuine smile and a quiet nod. But as you meander through the residential streets, a subtle, discordant note begins to play in the back of your mind. Something is off. You can't quite place it at first. You admire a particularly lovely cottage, its stonework impeccable, its garden a riot of color. But then you notice the porch. It's unusually deep, the roof extending so far out that the front door and windows are cast in perpetual shadow. The eaves of the main roof hang low, almost like a heavy brow pulled down to shield the house's gaze. You dismiss it as a single architectural quirk. But then you see it on the next house, and the one after that. It's a consistent design language spoken throughout the entire town. Every porch is a deep, shadowy cavern. Every roof has a low, protective pitch. The windows on the upper floors of the buildings aren't grand, open panes to let in the mountain views. They are small, narrow, almost like slits you'd find in a medieval fortress. They are all designed to look out and down, never up. It's as if the entire town was built with a deliberate collective effort to minimize its exposure to the sky. Why, you wonder, in a place surrounded by such breathtaking natural beauty, would anyone build homes that seem to be cowering from the heavens? As you stand in the town square, a small cobbled circle with a granite fountain at its center, another strange feeling washes over you. It's the distinct, prickling sensation of being watched. You do what anyone would do. You scan the windows of the surrounding shops, the inn, the town hall. You expect to see a face, a curtain twitching, but you see nothing. The feeling persists, and you slowly realize it isn't coming from any of the buildings. The pressure isn't horizontal, it's vertical. It feels like a weight pressing down from an immense, impossible height. You feel exposed, a specimen on a slide. You shake your head, a nervous laugh catching in your throat. It must be the altitude, the sudden quiet after the city's roar, your mind playing tricks on you. But the feeling, the distinct sense of being observed by something vast and impossibly high above, lingers like a chill in the air. You check into the inn. The proprietor is a kind, soft-spoken man who seems pleased to have a visitor. Your room is on the second floor. It's cozy and clean. The floor is made of wide, dark planks of wood. But the window, it's just as you'd noticed elsewhere. Small, set low in the wall, and angled distinctly downward, offering a pleasant but restricted view of the street below and the creek rushing past. There is no view of the mountains. There is no view of the sky. Lying on the bed, you stare at the ceiling, trying to piece together the disjointed feelings of the last hour. The charm is undeniable, but it's layered over something else, a kind of architectural anxiety, a town built to keep its eyes on the ground. The open question hangs in the quiet room, more persistent than the sound of the creek. What kind of shared secret, what deep-seated, unspoken fear could compel generations of people to collectively avert their gaze from the sky? You wake the next morning to the smell of frying bacon and coffee wafting up from the inn's kitchen. For a moment, the architectural oddities of Havenwood feel like a strange dream, a trick of the evening light. You feel rested. The peace of the valley seems to have seeped into your bones. You decide to embrace the day, to be a tourist in this forgotten corner of the world. You'll visit the blacksmith, browse the general store, maybe even find a path that leads up into the foothills of the mountains that loom over the town. You leave your room, your mind set on a day of simple pleasures. The main street is already humming with quiet activity. A delivery truck is making a drop at the general store. Its driver, a local man who moves with the same downcast, deliberate economy of motion as everyone else. Shopkeepers sweep their stoops, their brooms making soft, rhythmic whispers against the stone. Everything is bathed in the crisp, clean light of morning. You buy a coffee from the innkeeper and stand on the deep porch, watching the town wake up. That's when you see it. A little girl, no older than 5 or 6, is playing near the central fountain. She's chasing a bright red ball, her laughter a clear, happy sound that cuts through the town's morning quiet. Her mother watches from a nearby bench, knitting, her head bowed over her work. The ball takes an errant bounce, rolling into the middle of the cobbled square. The little girl, giggling, runs after it. She stoops, picks it up, and holds it triumphantly above her head. In that simple, childish gesture of victory, Her gaze naturally follows the arc of her own hands, upwards. Her head tilts back. Her face opens to the vast empty blue of the morning sky. The change is instantaneous and terrifying. It's like a switch has been flipped, plunging the entire street into a state of silent, coordinated panic. The mother drops her knitting, a strangled gasp escaping her lips. She doesn't scream. No one does. It's a fear too deep for screaming. She sprints to her daughter, her movements frantic, but weirdly silent. The blacksmith, who had been hammering a piece of iron, stops mid-swing, the sudden absence of the ringing clang, a deafening void. The shopkeeper freezes, broom in hand. Every single person on that street stops what they are doing, but they don't look at the girl. They look at the ground. They stare at their feet, at the cobblestones, at the wall of the building opposite them, anywhere but at the small child who has just broken their most sacred, unspoken rule. The mother reaches the girl, scoops her up in one arm, and places her other hand firmly over the child's eyes, pressing her face into her shoulder. She half drags, half carries her daughter away from the center of the square, whispering frantically. The words are too low for you to make out clearly, but the tone is unmistakable. It's not angry. It's pleading. She's not scolding her child. She's apologizing to something else. Her own eyes are squeezed shut as she hurries back to the relative safety of a store's deep awning. The moment she is under cover, the town seems to take a collective shuddering breath. The blacksmith resumes his hammering, the rhythm somehow more frantic than before. The shopkeeper starts sweeping again with short, agitated strokes. Life resumes, but the peaceful facade has been shattered. The air is now thick with a fear you can taste, metallic and cold. You saw it. You saw what they do. This isn't just a quirk. It's a ceremony of terror. The town's reaction wasn't to the child's action, but to the potential consequence of that action. You feel a knot of ice form in your stomach. The coffee in your hand is suddenly cold. You need to understand. Later that afternoon, you see an elderly woman tending the flowers in the window boxes of her small cottage. She moves with a slow grace, her wide-brimmed straw hat casting a deep shadow over her face. Her focus is entirely on the soil and the petals. She seems approachable, a part of the town's gentle scenery. You walk over, leaning on the low garden fence. "Pardon me," you start, your voice sounding too loud in the quiet air. "I saw something this morning. A little girl in the square. Is she all right?" The woman doesn't look up at first. She continues to pinch a dead blossom from a geranium, her knuckles gnarled with age. After a long moment, she slowly straightens, keeping her head angled down so the hat's brim still shields her eyes from the open sky. She gives you a small, tight smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Her eyes are a pale, washed-out blue, and they hold a deep, ancient weariness. "The little ones," she says, her voice a dry rustle of leaves, "they forget sometimes. They still have the instinct to wonder. But what was everyone so afraid of?" You press, your curiosity overriding your caution. She just looked up. The woman's smile falters. She glances at your face, then quickly away, down at a loose stone in a garden path. The silence stretches, filled only by the buzzing of a bee. You can feel her weighing her words, deciding what a stranger can be told. The pity in her expression is what unnerves you the most. It's the look one gives to the blissfully, dangerously ignorant. Finally she sighs, a soft exhalation of breath. She turns her gaze back to her flowers. "It's an old habit," she says, the words carefully chosen, "a way we keep the peace." She looks at you again, her gaze direct for just a second, and in that fleeting moment you see a flicker of genuine terror. "It's just better this way. It's better not to draw its attention." She offers no more. She turns back to her gardening, her posture a clear dismissal. You are left standing there by the fence, the simple sentence echoing in your mind. It's better not to draw its attention. The pronoun hangs in the air, shapeless and monstrous, not his or her, not there, just it's. What is it? An animal, a local superstition, or something else entirely? The open question now has a name, or rather, a placeholder for one, and the nature of this unnamed, unseen thing that commands such profound, terrified reverence from an entire town begins to feel like a puzzle you are compelled, for your own sanity, to solve. The old woman's words, "It's better not to draw its attention," become a lens through which you now see everything in Havenwood. The charm of the town doesn't just seem superficial anymore. It feels like a carefully constructed defense mechanism. You spend the rest of the day and the next simply observing, becoming a student of this strange, inverted culture. You are no longer just a visitor. You are an anthropologist of dread. And what you find is a society so profoundly shaped by this singular, terrifying prohibition that it has influenced every facet of their existence. It's not just the architecture. It's everything. You watch the way people walk. Their gait is subtly different from the city dwellers you're used to. They move with a purpose, their eyes fixed on a point a few yards ahead of them on the ground. There's no casual meandering, no idle stargazing or cloud watching. Even when crossing the street, they don't look up and down the road in the conventional way. They seem to listen intently, their heads cocked slightly, their vision remaining stubbornly parallel to the earth. It gives them a humble, almost prayerful posture, as if they are in constant silent supplication to the ground beneath their feet. The porches, you realize now, are more than just architectural features. They are social hubs. Life happens in these deep, shadowy spaces. Neighbors gather on porch swings, sharing gossip and cups of tea, always under the solid, reassuring presence of a roof. Children play with their toys not on open lawns, but on the flagstones of these covered patios. The porch is a safe zone, an intermediary space between the confinement of the indoors and the terrifying exposure of the outside world. It allows for a community life that would otherwise be impossible. You notice the games the children play. There are no kites. No one throws a ball high into the air. Instead, they play games of marbles, jacks, and chalk drawings on the sidewalks. They roll hoops along the ground and sail small wooden boats in the creek. Their world of play, so often a realm of boundless imagination, has been given a very firm, very low ceiling. You watch a group of boys playing a version of tag. The safe zone, or base, is always under the thick, low-hanging branches of an ancient weeping willow in the town square. They dart from the shadow of one building's awning to another, their movements quick and furtive, like mice trying to cross an open field under the watchful eye of a hawk. This deep-seated phobia of the sky extends to their work as well. You see the farmers in the fields surrounding the town. They wear wide-brimmed hats, not just to shield them from the sun, but as a kind of visual blinder, They work with their heads perpetually bowed. Their focus on the soil, the seeds, the harvest. Their movements are efficient, born of generations of practice, designed to get the job done with minimal exposure. You realize with a jolt that there are no orchards of tall fruit trees in Havenwood. The agriculture is all low to the ground, squash, potatoes, beans, corn that is harvested before it grows too tall. Anything that would require them to reach or look up. One afternoon, you visit the town's small one-room library housed in a wing of the town hall. The librarian, a middle-aged woman named Elara, helps you find a book on local flora. As she pulls the book from a low shelf, she mentions something that clicks another piece of the puzzle into place. Best to do your hiking in the morning or late afternoon, she advises, her voice soft. When the sun is low. The trails under the thickest parts of the canopy are the most popular. It's not about avoiding the midday heat. It's about ensuring there are always branches overhead, a ceiling of leaves, the very concept of hiking, an activity usually sought for its expansive summit views, has been inverted here to be an exercise in seeking cover. The most chilling detail you uncover, however, is a small, mundane object in the general store. You're browsing the shelves, stocked with everything from canned goods to hardware, when you see a collection of hand mirrors near the counter. They aren't ornate or decorative. They are simple, practical mirrors with plain wooden handles. You ask the store owner what they're for. He looks at you, his expression guarded, and explains they're weather mirrors. Weather mirrors? You repeat, confused. Aye, he says, polishing one with a soft cloth, his eyes never leaving his task. If you need to know what the sky's doing, if a storm's brewing, say, you don't just look. The way he says the word look is laced with a specific kind of revulsion. You take a mirror, hold it down by your waist, and angle it up. You can see the reflection of the clouds without offering your face to it. The sheer practical ingenuity of this is horrifying. They have devised a tool, a method, to see what they need to see without ever breaking their cardinal rule. They can check for rain by looking at a tiny, hand-held patch of reflected sky, safely held below eye level. A documented tool for a specific unholy purpose. This isn't just superstition. Superstition is avoiding black cats or walking under ladders. This is a fundamental re-engineering of society, a complete adaptation to a perceived, persistent threat. The paranoia is so deeply ingrained, it has become practical, mundane, and utterly terrifying. You leave the store, the image of the weather mirror burned into your mind. You think about the profound psychological impact. What does it do to the human spirit to be raised in a world where you are taught to fear the sky, to associate the vast open canvas of blue, a universal symbol of freedom, of infinity, of dreams, with a nameless, predatory it? This fear has pruned their ambitions, tailored their architecture, and dictated their children's games. The open question that forms in your mind is no longer just about the nature of the entity. It's about the soul of Havenwood itself. How much of our humanity is tied to our ability to look up, to dream of things beyond our immediate reach, and what becomes of a people who have collectively, for generations, surrendered that instinct? Your evenings in Havenwood become a new kind of ritual. The town seems to draw its breath in as dusk falls, the streets emptying quickly, the warm light from windows a stark contrast to the deepening gloom outside. The Hearthside Inn has a small attached tavern, a place called the Bent Nail. It's the only establishment that stays open after dark, and it's where you find yourself drawn night after night, searching for answers in the bottom of a glass of local ale. The tavern is a sanctuary of shadows. The ceiling is low, supported by thick, dark wooden beams. The only light comes from a few greasy, amber-colored lamps that cast just enough of a glow to see the person across from your table. There are no windows. It is a room designed for secrets. It's here, in the dim, smoky air of the Bent Nail, that you begin to hear the stories. They are never told directly to you, the outsider. They are exchanged in hushed tones between the local men, farmers, and loggers, and craftsmen who come to wash the day's anxieties away. They speak in fragments, in half-sentences, their voices low and rough. You learn to just sit, to nurse your drink, and to listen to the whispers that curl through the room like smoke. These are the tavern tales, the unofficial oral history of those who broke the rule, the sky gazers. The first story you piece together is about a man named Silas Blackwood, a trapper from 2 generations back. The story goes that Silas was a contrarian, a man who chafed at the town's traditions. He called it old world foolishness. One crisp autumn afternoon, on a dare from his fellows after too much hard cider, he declared he was going to see what was so frightening. He stood in the middle of the town square, right by the fountain, and tilted his head back. He stared straight up into the clear blue sky for a full minute, a defiant grin on his face. According to the hushed telling, nothing happened. Not at first. Silas laughed, called the others cowards, and went about his business. But the next day, something had changed. He couldn't seem to focus. He'd stare at things, a wall, a tree, a person's face, with an unnerving intensity, as if he were trying to see through them. He stopped speaking in coherent sentences. He'd start a thought, then trail off, his eyes glazing over with a kind of confused terror. He took to his bed, and within a week he was gone. The official story was that he'd succumbed to a sudden, virulent fever, but the tavern whispers tell a different tale. They say his mind had been scooped out, that whatever he saw up there had unraveled him from the inside like a loose thread on a sweater, until there was nothing left of the man he was. Another night, you overhear 2 old men talking about a young couple, visitors like yourself, who had come to Havenwood back in the 70s. They were hikers, nature lovers. They'd laughed at the local customs, dismissing them as quaint folklore. They'd set off to climb Black Peak, the tallest mountain overlooking the valley, eager for the panoramic view from the summit. They never came back. A search party was sent, but the men who went were careful. They searched the lower tree-covered slopes, calling the couple's names, but they would not venture above the tree line. They found a single hiking boot and a camera near the edge of the alpine zone. The camera is the chilling detail that grounds this legend in a terrifying reality. The film was developed back in town. Most of the photos were what you'd expect. Smiling shots of the couple on the trail, pictures of wildflowers, the creek. But the last photo was different. It was taken from the summit, looking not out at the horizon, but straight up. The image was distorted, blurred, as if the camera had been shaking violently, but through the blur you could apparently make out shapes, not clouds, not birds. The old man telling the story lowers his voice to a near inaudible whisper. He describes them as holes in the blue, like patches of the sky had been torn away, revealing a darkness behind them that was not the black of space, but a hungry, vibrating blackness, a void that was not empty, but filled with a terrible, active presence. The photo, he says, was burned by the town mayor the same day it was developed. The most personal and perhaps most disturbing psychological reaction you witness comes from the bartender himself, a large, quiet man named Arthur. A younger man, a logger who'd had too much to drink, starts boasting. "I ain't afraid," he slurs. "My grandfather told me the stories, but it's all just talk to keep us in line." He makes a show of standing up, stumbling toward the door. "I'll go look right now." Arthur moves faster than you've ever seen him move. He comes around the bar, grabs the young man by the arm, his grip like iron. He doesn't shout. He leans in close, his voice a low, desperate growl that cuts through the tavern's murmur. "You sit down, boy," he says, and the fear in his own voice is more potent than any threat. "You think it's a story? My older brother Thomas, he was 7. He flew a kite. Just a simple, homemade kite of wood and paper. He was so proud watching it climb. He just stood there in Miller's field, his face to the sky, smiling." Arthur's hand is shaking. "It didn't take him. It didn't strike him down with lightning. It did something worse. When he came home for dinner, he was still smiling that same smile, and he never stopped. For 30 years, he sat in a chair in my parents' house, smiling that same empty, happy smile. He never spoke another word. He just smiled at a world he couldn't see anymore. So you sit down, and you have a glass of water, and you thank whatever God you believe in that you live in a town that taught you to be afraid." The young man, sobered by the raw, genuine terror in Arthur's story, slumps back into his chair, pale and shaken. The tavern is silent. You sit with your drink, the ale tasting bitter in your mouth. The question that circles your mind is one of perception versus reality. Are these just cautionary tales, ghost stories spun to enforce a social taboo? Or are they fragmented accounts of a genuine, recurring phenomenon? Is the entity in the sky a physical threat? Or is its horror psychological? A kind of mimetic virus that infects the mind through the simple act of observation. The stories of Silas, the hikers, and Thomas all point to a terror that doesn't kill the body, but erases the self. And that, you realize with a cold dread, is a far more terrifying prospect. The tavern tales, with their raw anecdotal horror, have given a face, or rather, a facelessness, to the town's fear. But you crave something more concrete. Superstition and folklore are one thing. Documented history is another. You need to know if this unspoken rule is just a cultural habit, or if it was born from a specific, recorded event. This line of thinking leads you back to the one-room library in the town hall, and to its quiet, guarded keeper, Ilara. You surmise that if any official account of the town's origins exists, it would be here, tucked away in the driest, most dust-covered corner of this small repository of local knowledge. You approach Ilara with a carefully crafted story. You tell her you're a writer, interested in the unique histories of isolated American towns. You praise Havenwood's preservation of its heritage, its charming architecture, its self-sufficient spirit. You want to write a piece that celebrates it. The flattery works to a degree. It softens the guardedness in her eyes. She is proud of her town. and your genuine appreciation seems to disarm her. She agrees to help, guiding you to a small locked cabinet in the back of the room. "Our town archives," she says, her voice a little too casual. "Most of it is just boring records. Births, deaths, property deeds. You spend hours sifting through brittle, yellowed papers. You read through land grants and census data, trying to appear diligent in your fabricated research. You ask Alara questions about the town's founders, its economy, its relationship with the outside world over the centuries. You build a rapport. Finally, after a full day of this charade, you ask the question you came for. "You know," you say, feigning a sudden thought, "the architecture is so unique. The low eaves, the deep porches. Was there a particular founder or town planner who had that vision? It's so consistent. It feels like it must have come from a single guiding principle." Alara freezes. Her hands, which had been sorting a stack of papers, go still. You've trod on the forbidden ground. She looks at you, and you can see the internal struggle on her face. The librarian's duty to share knowledge warring with the citizen of Havenwood's instinct to protect its secrets. The silence stretches. You think she is going to shut you down, to tell you the archives are now closed. But then, with a sigh that seems to carry the weight of generations, she walks to a different part of the cabinet. She pulls out a single, leather-bound volume. It is not dusty like the others. It looks as if it is handled, if not often, then with a kind of reverent care. "This is not for public viewing," she says, her voice barely a whisper. She places it on the table in front of you. "This is the personal journal of Mayor Atticus Thorne. He was the first mayor of Havenwood after it was officially incorporated in 1888. She opens the book to a bookmarked page. Her finger, trembling slightly, points to an entry. "You are a writer. You want to understand. So understand this. But this book does not leave this room, and you will not speak of its contents to anyone else in this town." You nod, your heart hammering in your chest. She steps away, busying herself at her desk, but keeping a watchful eye on you. The entry is dated June 12th, 1891. The handwriting is a neat, elegant cursive, but on this page the loops are tight and the lines slant downwards as if written under immense strain. The entry is titled simply, "The Incident." Mayor Thorne writes not of monsters or ghosts, but of a day that started with an unnerving stillness. The birds stopped singing, the insects fell silent. An unnatural hush fell over the entire valley. The sky, he writes, was a perfect, flawless blue, yet it felt wrong. He describes a pressure in the air, the same feeling you had in the town square, but 100 times more intense. Then it began. It wasn't a noise. Thorne struggles for the words, scratching out several attempts. He finally settles on a resonance, a low, sub-audible hum that wasn't heard with the ears but felt in the bones, in the teeth. He describes how people, drawn from their homes by the oppressive silence, gathered in the streets, their faces turned upward in confusion and curiosity. They were looking at the sky, trying to find the source of the strange feeling. The mayor writes that he, too, was looking up, standing on the steps of the then newly built town hall. What he describes next is chilling in its simplicity. He saw a flicker, a shimmer in the azure, as he puts it. Not a craft, not a creature, but a brief, localized distortion in the fabric of the sky itself. Like heat haze on a summer road, but impossibly high up. The moment the flicker happened, a man in the crowd, a farmer named Jedediah, pointed up and shouted, "There! Did you see it?" And as soon as he had drawn attention to it, he screamed. It was a single, piercing shriek of pure agony. He clawed at his own eyes, falling to his knees. Then another person screamed, and another. A wave of psychic pain seemed to wash over everyone whose face was turned to the sky. Thorne himself, shielded by the small awning over the town hall steps, felt a stabbing pain behind his eyes and quickly looked down, a reflexive action that he says saved him. He watched in horror as nearly a dozen of his fellow townsfolk writhed on the ground, not physically harmed, but mentally shattered, screaming about the empty eye and the silent hunger. Thorne's account of the aftermath is what truly haunts you. The victims didn't die. Like the bartender's brother, they were hollowed out. They became placid, empty shells, their minds seemingly erased. The incident solidified the vague ancestral dread the settlers already felt into a concrete, undeniable law of survival. Don't look up, don't point, don't draw its attention. Thorne concludes the entry with a line that makes the hairs on your arms stand up. We are not its prey, for it does not seem to wish to consume our bodies. We are its entertainment, and it is a terribly jealous audience, punishing any who dare to look away from the stage of the world to gaze upon its face. You close the book, your hands shaking. This is the documented account, the Rosetta Stone of Havenwood's fear. It's not folklore. It was a specific, witnessed event, a moment of mass psychic trauma that became the town's founding principle. The open question that burns in your mind now is one of intent. Thorne's journal suggests a conscious, malevolent intelligence, not a blind force of nature, but a thinking entity. What kind of being possesses the power to flay a mind with a glance? And what is its ultimate purpose? Is it a warden, a predator, a god? The mayor's journal has given you the what, but the why remains a terrifying, bottomless abyss. Mayor Thorne's journal entry about the incident was a lightning strike, illuminating the town's present-day fear with a flash of historical terror. It explained the rule, but it didn't explain the town itself. Why here? Why this valley? Were the founders simply unlucky, settling in a place that happened to be under the gaze of this thing? Or was there something more? Your research in the archives, now guided by a darker purpose, shifts from the town's official history to its prehistory, to the very reason the first settlers chose this isolated, mountain-ringed valley to begin with. With Alara's reluctant, watchful permission, you delve into the older, more fragile documents, letters, diaries, and records from the original pioneer families who first carved a life out of this wilderness long before Havenwood was a proper town. These documents from the 1840s and 50s paint a picture of hardship and determination, but they also contain threads of a shared and peculiar experience that drew them here. They weren't seeking gold or particularly fertile land. They were seeking silence. You find a series of letters written by a woman named Esther Pike, one of the first matriarchs of the settlement. She was writing to her sister back east, trying to convince her to make the arduous journey west. Her letters don't speak of opportunity in the typical pioneer sense. She writes, "The world out here is loud, Abigail, not with the clangor of cities, but with a terrible, ceaseless wind on the plains and a sky so vast it mocks you. It is a lonely, shouting emptiness. But then she describes their arrival in the valley. When we came through the pass, she writes, it was as if a door had been shut on all that noise. The wind fell away. The sky here does not shout. It listens. This phrase, a listening sky, appears again and again in different writings. A farmer's diary from 1852 describes it in more pragmatic terms. Crops grow well enough, but it is the peace that is the true bounty of this place. On the prairies, the storms come from nowhere, a constant threat from above. Here, the mountains keep watch. The heavens are placid. We have found a haven walled off from the world's tempests. They saw the valley not as a trap, but as a sanctuary. They believed they had found the one quiet corner of a chaotic world. The most specific and chilling account of this founding silence comes from a document that isn't a letter or a diary, but a transcription of an oral history. It was dictated in the early 1900s by an old man named Samuel Bellows, who was just a boy during the initial settlement. He was recalling the story his father, one of the very first pioneers, told him about their arrival. He called it the first stillness. According to Samuel's telling, his father's party of settlers was camped just outside the valley, preparing to enter it for the first time. They were exhausted, their morale low. One night, a massive celestial event occurred. He describes it as the night the stars went out. Not a cloud in the sky, he insisted, but for a period of several hours, the stars themselves seemed to vanish, smothered by a darkness that was deeper and more absolute than the normal night sky. Following the vanishing stars, a meteor shower of incredible intensity lit up the horizon, but it was silent, utterly, unnervingly silent. Hundreds of streaks of light, some as bright as the full moon, blazed across the heavens without a single sonic boom, without a crackle or a hiss. It was a light show with the volume turned off. The settlers, terrified, huddled together, believing it was a sign of the apocalypse. But when the dawn came, the valley they were about to enter seemed transformed. The air was calm. The light was soft. The oppressive sense of exposure they had felt on their journey was gone. It felt, as Samuel's father put it, as if the sky had spent all its fury and was now sleeping. They entered the valley, believing it had been blessed, divinely silenced. They saw the quiet sky not as a threat, but as a promise of peace. This was their founding silence, the very event that consecrated the land for them. You sit back in the library chair, the pieces clicking together with a dreadful resonance. They weren't wrong. The sky here was different, but they had tragically misinterpreted the reason. The silence wasn't a blessing, it was a symptom. The absence of noise wasn't peace, it was the stillness of a predator lying in wait. The celestial event wasn't a divine light show, it was the arrival. It was the moment the entity settled over the valley, its presence so vast and absolute that it smothered the very stars and muted the friction of meteors burning through the atmosphere. They hadn't found a sanctuary. They had built their homes in the one place they should have fled from. They walked directly into the lion's den because it was the only place where they couldn't hear the lion roar. This reframes the entire history of Havenwood. The town's very existence is a paradox, founded on a catastrophic misunderstanding. The deep human psychological need for peace and safety led them to the one place that offered neither. They were lured in by the entity's passive state, only to be shattered by its active one during the incident a few decades later. They ran from the shouting sky of the open plains and sought refuge in the mouth of the thing that listens. The open question that hangs in the dusty air of the archive is one of causality and attraction. Did the entity choose this valley for a specific reason? Is there something about the geology, the mountains, the people themselves that attracted it or allows it to remain? Or was it a random cosmic event, a ship of horrors that happened to run aground here? Are the people of Havenwood just the unlucky inhabitants of a shoreline where a monstrous intelligence from some unimaginable ocean has washed up? The silence they sought has become a cage, and the walls of that cage are the very mountains they once saw as their protectors. You've pieced together the what from Mayor Thorne's journal and the when from the settlers' accounts of the founding silence. But the most terrifying question remains unanswered: the nature of the entity itself. The townsfolk call it it. Thorne called it a terribly jealous audience. The tavern tales hint at a mind flayer. But these are all metaphors, attempts by the human mind to categorize the incomprehensible. You need more. You need a theory, a name, a shape for your fear. And you know there's only one person who might give it to you: Ilara, the librarian. She holds the keys, not just to the archives, but to the deeper, more esoteric knowledge of the town. You spend another day in the library, not reading, but waiting. You've shown her that you are not a mocker, that you have absorbed the gravity of what you've learned. You treat archives with a funereal respect. In the late afternoon, as the light begins to fail, you finally approach her desk again. You don't ask a question. You make a statement. They thought it was a sanctuary, you say, your voice low. The silence. They didn't understand what it meant. Ilara looks up from her work, her face pale in the dimming light. She studies you for a long time, her gaze probing. She sees the understanding in your eyes, the shared dread. The last of her defenses seems to crumble, replaced by a weary resignation. She knows you are too far in to be sent away with platitudes. No, she says, her voice a fragile whisper. They didn't. They were like children finding a beautiful, unusually quiet cave to play in, not realizing it was a bear's den. She gestures for you to sit in the chair opposite her desk. This is no longer a librarian helping a researcher. This is an indoctrination. You've read the accounts, she begins, her hand clasped tightly on the desk. You've heard the stories. You keep trying to think of it as a creature, a monster, a thing that lives in the sky like a bird or a storm. That is where you are wrong. That is where everyone is wrong at first. She leans forward, her eyes locking onto yours. It is not in the sky. It is the sky. Or rather, a portion of it, a patch of reality that has been replaced. Think of the world as a painting on a canvas. What hangs over our valley is not another layer of paint. It is a hole in the canvas, a rip. And what we see through the rip is not the wall behind the painting, but something else entirely, a different kind of reality, a place where the rules of existence are predatory. This concept is so alien, so much more terrifying than a simple monster, that you struggle to process it. A hole in the world. She sees the confusion on your face and tries to explain further. Mayor Thorne was close when he wrote of a silent hunger. But it doesn't hunger for flesh or bone. It hungers for attention, for focus, for consciousness. It is an awareness that feeds on the awareness of others. She explains the town's prevailing dreadful theory, a piece of lore passed down through generations of librarians and town elders. The entity is a form of sentient psychic vacuum, a void that is not empty, but is defined by an insatiable need to be filled. When a person looks up, truly directs their conscious thought towards it, they are opening a channel. Their focus, their awareness, their very sense of self is what travels up that channel, and the void, in turn, drains it. It's not an attack. It's a passive, natural process, like water flowing downhill. Consciousness flows from a place of lower potential, the human mind, to a place of infinite potential, the emptiness that is not empty. That's why the victims are not killed, Alara whispers, the horror of it fresh in her voice, even after a lifetime of knowing. Silas Blackwood, the bartender's brother, their minds weren't destroyed. They were transferred, siphoned away. What is left behind is a body that functions, breathes, eats. But the person, the soul, the consciousness that animated it is gone. It has been consumed to feed the void's awareness of its own existence. It is the ultimate form of narcissism, a god that only knows it exists when its creations are looking at it. The chilling detail she provides is not from a book, but from her own family's history. Her great-grandmother, she tells you, was a midwife. In the late 1890s, a few years after the incident, she was attending a birth during a particularly clear, bright day. The baby was born healthy, a crying infant. The new mother, exhausted but joyous, was holding her child by the window. In a moment of pure instinctual love, she lifted the baby up to the light, saying, "Look, my love, look at the beautiful day you've been born into." The baby's unfocused, newborn gaze drifted upward for just a second. Ilara's voice cracks. The baby stopped crying. Instantly. It just went silent. It was still breathing. Its heart was beating. But the spark was gone. My great-grandmother said its eyes, which had been bright and searching just a moment before, became like dull glass beads. The mother lost her mind with grief. She understood what she had done. She had offered up her own child's brand-new, unwritten consciousness as a sacrifice on the first day of its life. The sheer devastating cruelty of this anecdote strikes you dumb. A being so passively malevolent that it would drain the nascent soul of an infant. You finally understand the town's profound, multi-generational terror. They are living beneath a cosmic predator that operates on principles so alien they are almost impossible to grasp. It doesn't hunt. It doesn't hate. It simply is, and its existence is predicated on the unmaking of theirs. The open question that forms in the wake of Ilara's explanation is one of scale and scope. Is this phenomenon unique to Havenwood? Is this the only hole in the canvas of the world? Or are there other similar patches of predatory emptiness scattered across the globe, each with its own local terrified population and its own set of unspoken rules? Is the sky we all look up at, the one we take for granted as a symbol of benign infinity, actually a patchwork quilt of safe zones and invisible territories ruled by things that hunger for the very act of our looking? You are no longer just afraid for yourself or for the people of Havenwood. You are afraid for everyone. Armed with the horrifying truth of the entity's nature, a conscious, predatory emptiness, you find it impossible to see Havenwood as anything but a stage for a grim, perpetual play. The mundane routines you once found charming now seem like frantic, desperate rituals. The downward gazes, the deep porches, the children's ground-level games, they are all acts in a performance designed to appease a silent, unseen audience. And this performance reaches its terrifying zenith during the town's most important annual event, the Festival of Lowered Eyes. When you first heard about it, the name seemed poetic, quaint. Now it sounds like a death sentence. Elara had told you about it, her voice heavy with a sense of weary obligation. It's held on the anniversary of the incident, a day of remembrance and reaffirmation of their pact of ignorance. It's not a celebration. It's a collective, ritualized act of survival. Your morbid curiosity, your need to see this philosophy in action, compels you to stay. You have to witness it. The day of the festival arrives with the same unnerving stillness described in Mayor Thorne's journal. The air is still and heavy. The sky is a flawless, piercing blue. There is a palpable tension that grips the town, a shared anxiety that hums just beneath the surface of the quiet. The festival doesn't begin with a parade or a speech. It begins with the ringing of a single, heavy bell from the town hall. The same bell that once called the citizens to the square on that fateful day in 1891. At the sound of the bell, every person in Havenwood emerges from their home. They are dressed in simple, somber colors, grays, browns, dark blues. They move in silence, their heads bowed, their eyes fixed on the ground before them. They converge on the town square, the epicenter of the original trauma, and form a large silent circle around the fountain. You watch from the deep, shadowy porch of the Hearthside Inn, feeling like a profane voyeur at a sacred, terrible ceremony. The ritual itself is a masterpiece of psychological endurance. There are no prayers, no songs. The centerpiece of the festival is an act of communal, sustained avoidance. For 1 hour, timed by a sandglass set up by the current mayor, the entire population of Havenwood stands in the open square, completely exposed, and forces themselves not to look up. It is a test of willpower, a deliberate act of ignoring the immense, pressing presence that they can all feel weighing down on them. You watch their faces, those you can see from your vantage point. You see lips moving in silent prayers, knuckles white as they grip their own hands. You see parents holding their children's hands, their thumbs stroking the back of their small hands in a gesture of reassurance. The children, raised in this culture of fear, are preternaturally still, their faces grim, their eyes glued to the cobblestones. They understand the stakes. This is not a game. The most unsettling part of the ritual is what they do with their ears. With their sense of sight so forcefully denied its upward instinct, their hearing becomes painfully acute. Every small sound is magnified. The soft sigh of the wind through the awnings, the distant gurgle of the creek of a leather shoe. They are listening. They are listening for the hum, the resonance that Mayor Thorne described. They are listening for the first sign that the entity has taken notice, that someone in the circle has faltered. Halfway through the hour, a young woman near the edge of the circle begins to tremble. A soft, whimpering sound escapes her lips. Her resolve is breaking. You can see the struggle on her face, the desperate fight against the instinct to look up, to confront the source of her terror. The people standing next to her don't look at her. They don't reach out to comfort her. They can't. To acknowledge her struggle would be to acknowledge the object of her struggle. Instead, they shuffle, almost imperceptibly, the entire circle tightening its formation, their collective downward focus intensifying, as if they are trying to use their combined willpower to shield her, to hide her faltering consciousness from the thing above. The woman manages to stifle her sobs, bowing her head so low her forehead almost touches her knees. She holds. The circle holds. The chilling, documented detail of this festival is the tradition of the keepsake stones. Before the festival begins, every person, child, and adult alike picks up a small, smooth stone from the creek bed. They hold this stone tightly in their hand for the duration of the hour-long vigil. The stone is a physical anchor, a tangible piece of the world below to focus on. It is a tool to ground their consciousness, to give them something to pour their attention into other than the terrifying void above. After the hour is up and the bell rings a second time to signal the end of the ritual, they don't keep the stones. They walk, still in silence, to the town's cemetery. There, at the base of a large, unmarked granite slab that serves as a monument to the first victims of the incident, they place their stones, adding to a pile that has been growing for over a century. It is a monument built not of memory, but of fear, a cairn of averted gazes. You watch them file away, their shoulders slumped with exhaustion. The festival is an act of profound psychological self-flagellation. They are reopening the wound each year to remind themselves why it must never be allowed to heal. It's a necessary horror, they believe, to prevent a greater one. The question that consumes you as you watch the last person leave the square is about the nature of this pact. Is this ritual truly keeping them safe, or is it merely an elaborate shared delusion, a performance for an audience that may not even care? Is their collective act of ignoring the entity what protects them, or does it, in its own way, feed it? By creating such a powerful, focused ritual of not looking, are they not, in fact, giving the entity a different kind of attention, a negative space to fill? Perhaps the most terrifying possibility is that their sacred festival is nothing more than a dinner bell. The festival of lowered eyes leaves you with a profound sense of hopelessness. The people of Havenwood seem trapped in a self-perpetuating cycle of fear, their most sacred tradition an annual reinforcement of their own imprisonment. You feel a growing conviction that this terrified silence, this collective pact of ignorance, cannot be the only answer. There must have been others who questioned it, who fought against it, who tried to understand the entity rather than simply hide from it. Silas Blackwood was a daredevil, not a researcher. The hikers were naive tourists. You need to find a dissenter, a heretic, someone who looked up not out of defiance or ignorance, but out of a need for knowledge. Your search leads you back to the musty corners of the town's history, but not the official archives. You start thinking about the places where dissent might fester, where a private rebellion could be recorded, a school, perhaps, a place of learning and questioning. You find out that the old, original schoolhouse, abandoned since a new one was built in the 1960s, is still standing on the edge of town, used now as a storage shed for the Public Works Department. An idea takes root, a desperate long shot. Under the cover of a moonless, overcast night, a rare and welcome reprieve from the clear, menacing skies, you make your way to the old schoolhouse. The lock on the door is old and rusty, and it gives way with a groan under the pressure of a tire iron from your car. The air inside is thick with the smell of dust, rotting paper, and dry decay. Piles of old desks, road signs, and broken tools are stacked haphazardly. It feels like a fool's errand. You search for hours by the weak beam of your flashlight, sifting through mounds of forgotten junk. You're about to give up when your light catches a loose floorboard beneath a stack of salt-stained tarps. Prying it up, you find a small tin box, the kind that once held biscuits or tea. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, is a single, hard-bound journal. The cover is plain, black, and unmarked. You open it. The handwriting is a precise, disciplined script. The first entry is dated September 5th, 1954. The name on the inside cover reads, Anna Keene. Anna Keene, you learn from the journal, was the town school teacher for nearly 30 years. But she was not from Havenwood. She came from outside, a young, idealistic woman full of post-war optimism and a belief in science and reason. Her journal begins as a simple diary, recording her frustrations with the town's peculiar superstitions and her attempts to encourage her students to be curious, to ask questions, to look at the world with wide open eyes. But her tone quickly changes. She describes her growing unease, her dawning realization that the town's fear was not just folklore, it was real. But unlike the others, Anna did not succumb to the fear. She reacted like the scientist she was at heart. She decided to study it. Her journal transforms from a personal diary into a meticulous, secret log of a terrifying experiment. She knew she couldn't look up directly, not for any length of time. She had witnessed the aftermath of a child's accidental glance, and it had shaken her to her core. So she devised a method of observation, one far more dangerous than the simple weather mirrors used by the townsfolk. The chilling, documented detail of her research is her use of a pinhole camera. She built one herself out of an old shoebox. She reasoned that if the entity's effect was tied to the amount of consciousness directed at it, then perhaps a tiny indirect aperture would be safe. It would allow her to capture an image of the sky without ever truly looking at it with the full focus of her own eyes. Every clear day, for a period of almost 5 years, Anna would place her pinhole box on the windowsill of the schoolhouse attic, aiming it at the sky. She would leave it there for a few hours, then develop the small, rudimentary photographs in a makeshift darkroom. Her journal is filled with these tiny black and white images, pasted onto the pages. The first few dozen show nothing but an empty, overexposed white square. But then they begin to appear. At first, they are just faint smudges, imperfections in the image. But as she refined her technique, they become clearer. She saw what the hiker's camera had captured, but in stark scientific detail. The holes in the blue, she describes them as non-spaces, areas in the photograph that were not black, but a pure light-devouring absence. They drifted. They were not fixed. Sometimes they were small, like scattered coins. Other times, they would merge into a single, vast chasm of nothingness that would dominate the frame. Anna's written observations are even more terrifying than the pictures. She starts to notice patterns. The holes seem to grow larger and more numerous during periods of clear, sunny weather. They would shrink, sometimes disappearing entirely on overcast or stormy days. This led her to a horrifying hypothesis. The entity, this predatory void, was not just a passive presence. It was photosensitive, or perhaps more accurately, It was attracted to the clear, unfiltered energy of the sun. The beautiful, clear days the rest of the world cherishes were the days the monster was most active, its mouth open widest. Her psychological reaction, documented in the margins of her journal, is a slow descent from scientific curiosity into obsessive dread. "I feel I am cataloging the features of my own tomb," she writes in one entry. In another, "To know this is to be tainted by it. I no longer see the sky as blue. I see only the canvas, and I am painfully aware of the rot that lies beneath the paint." She became a pariah in her own mind, holding a truth she could never share. She was living the ultimate intellectual isolation, to be the only one in a town of the blind who was trying to map the shape of the thing they all feared. You closed the journal, the weight of Anna's lonely, terrifying work settling on you. She was the dissenter you were looking for, and her secret has become your own. Her methodical research didn't offer a way to fight the entity, but it confirmed its nature in a way that is chillingly rational. It is a physical, observable, if only indirectly, phenomenon. The open question that her journal raises is one of mechanism. What is the connection between sunlight and the entity's activity? Is it a form of energy it feeds on? Is the blue sky a kind of camouflage that works best in bright light? Or is there an even more terrifying possibility that the entity and the sun are somehow linked, that the life-giving star that warms our planet is also the source of power for the thing that drains our souls? You look out the grimy window of the old schoolhouse. The sky is beginning to lighten with the approach of dawn, and for the first time in your life, you are not comforted by the thought of the sunrise. The discovery of Anna Keene's journal changes everything. You now carry a secret within a secret, a layer of empirical, chilling knowledge that even the most well-informed citizens of Havenwood, like Elara, do not possess. This knowledge becomes a constant humming presence in the back of your mind, recontextualizing every downward glance, every shadowy porch. The sky is no longer just a source of vague, superstitious dread for you. It is a scientifically observed variable, a hunting ground whose patterns you are now, to your horror, aware of. This knowledge makes you clumsy. It makes you paranoid, and it leads, inevitably, to a mistake. It happens 2 days after you find the journal. The weather has been mercifully overcast, a thick blanket of gray cloud sealing the valley off from the blue emptiness you now know is lurking behind it. You've spent the time in a state of low-grade, anxious dread, rereading Anna's notes, staring at her terrible little photographs. But on the 3rd day, you wake up to a world reborn in brilliant, painful sunlight. The clouds have vanished. The sky is a vast, seamless, perfect azure. Anna's research screams in your mind, this is a day of maximum exposure, a day when the holes are open wide. You decide you need to get out of the inn, out of the town center. The oppressive cheerfulness of the sunlit main street feels like a mockery. You decide to take that hike Elara had mentioned, the one that follows the creek deep into the woods under the thickest part of the forest canopy. A path of shadows. It feels like the only safe place to be. You tell yourself you're just stretching your legs, but you know you are fleeing. You are trying to put as much solid matter as possible between yourself and the sky. The path is beautiful and deeply comforting at first. The trees are so tall and their branches so tightly interwoven that only thin, shifting slivers of sunlight reach the forest floor. You are in a green, silent tunnel. The only sounds are the rush of the creek beside you and the soft crunch of pine needles under your boots. You walk for over an hour, the tension in your shoulders slowly beginning to ease. The canopy is your shield. You are safe. You are hidden. But the path, like all paths, is not perfect. It has to cross a small clearing, a place where a lightning strike or a patch of rocky soil has prevented the trees from growing. It's not a large clearing, no more than 30 feet across, but to you, it feels like a vast, exposed desert. You hesitate at the edge of the trees, staring across the sun-drenched patch of ground to the continuation of the path on the other side. It feels like a test. You take a deep breath, fix your eyes on the ground directly in front of you, and begin to walk. You are halfway across. Your gaze is locked on your own feet, watching your boots move one in front of the other. Left, right, left, right. And then it happens. A tree root, gnarled and ancient, hidden beneath a patch of moss. Your foot catches. Your momentum carries you forward. You are falling. It's a simple, clumsy trip. The kind of fall that happens 1,000 times a day all over the world. But here, in Havenwood, it's a catastrophic failure. As you stumble, your body's instincts take over. Your arms fly out to break your fall. Your head snaps back to orient yourself in space. And your eyes, your traitorous, instinct-driven eyes, flick upward. It's not for long, less than a second, a fraction of a moment. It is not a conscious decision to look, but a reflex. But it is enough. What you see is not the empty blue sky you're expecting. For that brief, involuntary moment, your brain, primed by Anna Keene's journal and the town's collective fear, registers the impossible. You see the hole. It's not a black void like in her photographs. In full, terrifying color, it is a patch of sky that is the wrong kind of blue. It is a deeper, more vibrant, more absolute blue, a color so pure and perfect it feels like it's drinking the light around it. And in the center of that impossible blue, for a sliver of a second, you see a flicker of motion. Not movement across the sky, but movement within it. A slow, nauseating inward spiraling like water going down a drain. It is the visual equivalent of the subaudible hum Mayor Thorne described. It is the motion of a vast, silent vortex. It is the act of consumption, made visible. You hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the wind out of you. But the physical pain is nothing. You scramble to your hands and knees, gasping, and press your face into the dirt and moss, squeezing your eyes shut with a force that makes colors explode behind your eyelids. But you can't unsee it. The image is burned onto the inside of your mind. The patch of impossible, predatory blue, and the slow, silent spiral. You lie there for how long? You don't know. Your heart is a frantic drum against your ribs. A cold sweat drenches your body. The silence of the clearing is no longer peaceful. It is the silence of held breath. The feeling of being watched is no longer a vague paranoia. It is a certainty. You felt its attention touch you. It was a cold, clinical, utterly impersonal focus, like a scientist peering through a microscope. You have been seen. You have been noticed. You finally push yourself up, keeping your head bowed so low your chin touches your chest. You don't dare look anywhere but at your own feet. You stumble back the way you came, moving with a frantic, shuffling haste, never once lifting your gaze from the path. You are no longer an observer in Havenwood. You are not a researcher or a curious visitor. You are one of them now. You have looked. You have seen. The psychological impact is immediate and devastating. The fear is no longer an external concept you are studying. It is inside you. It is a part of your memory, a scar on your vision. The open question that now screams in your mind is stripped of all intellectual curiosity. It is raw, personal, and terrifyingly simple. What happens now? You make it back to the inn, stumbling through the door like a fugitive seeking sanctuary. Your mind is a maelstrom of the image you saw, the impossible blue, the silent spiraling vortex. You lock yourself in your room, drawing the curtains, creating a premature twilight. You feel tainted, marked. The brief, accidental glimpse has changed the very texture of your reality. The world outside your window doesn't feel real anymore. Only the memory of that terrible, beautiful, hungry patch of sky feels real. You try to rationalize it, to tell yourself it was a trick of the light, a retinal burn from the bright sun, your overwrought imagination projecting Anna's findings onto the world. But you know it's a lie. You know what you saw. The next morning, you force yourself to leave the room. You can't hide forever. You need food. You need to pretend that everything is normal, even though you feel like you're screaming on the inside. You walk down to the common room for breakfast, your posture unconsciously mimicking that of the locals. Head down, gaze fixed on the floorboards, every step a deliberate effort to keep your world small and low. But as you enter the room, a hush falls. It's not an accusatory silence. It's not hostile. It's something far worse. It's a silence of profound, heartbreaking pity. The few patrons in the room, a family, a couple of old men, stop their quiet conversations. The innkeeper's wife, who is setting down a plate of eggs on a table, freezes for a second. They don't stare at you. In fact, they do the opposite. They pointedly look away. They look at their plates, into their coffee cups, at the wall, anywhere but at you. They are extending to you the same courtesy they extend to the sky. They are refusing to give you their attention. You are no longer an intriguing outsider. You are a contamination. You are a reminder of the fragility of their defenses. You are a walking embodiment of their greatest fear. You can feel their quiet, collective panic. It radiates from them in waves of sympathetic dread. They know. You don't know how they know, but it's as clear as if you had a brand on your forehead. Your demeanor, your aura, the subtle tremor in your hands as you pour yourself a coffee, it all screams of someone who has been seen. The innkeeper Arthur, the same man whose brother was lost to a kite, approaches you. He keeps his eyes fixed on the coffee pot in your hand. "Feeling all right there?" he asks, his voice low and gentle. It's the same tone one would use for a terminally ill patient. "Fine," you lie, your voice a hoarse crackle. "Just didn't sleep well." He nods slowly, still not meeting your eyes. "The sun was bright yesterday," he says, and the simple meteorological observation is laden with a universe of meaning. It's not an accusation. It's a diagnosis. Can be hard on the eyes. He places a comforting hand on your shoulder for a brief moment, a gesture of profound, sorrowful solidarity. Then he turns and walks away, leaving you standing there, utterly isolated in a room full of people. This gentle, pitying ostracism is more unnerving than any anger or confrontation could ever be. They aren't shunning you out of malice. They are shunning you out of a deep, instinctual fear for you. They are treating you like a casualty, a victim who is, for all intents and purposes, already gone. The documented historical account that Lara shared with you about the midwife and the newborn baby now takes on a horrifying new light. You recall the detail that the baby's eyes, after its brief upward glance, became like dull glass beads. You catch your own reflection in the dark screen of your phone. Are your eyes different? Do they look empty? You don't know. You are too afraid to truly look. The psychological reaction of the townspeople is a slow, quiet horror. They are not afraid of you. They are afraid of what you represent. They see in you the reflection of their own loved ones who were lost. Silas Blackwood, Arthur's brother, the countless others whose stories are only whispered in the dim light of the bent nail. The human tendency to gawk at an accident, to stare at a disaster, is completely inverted here. Their instinct is to look away, to not let the contagion of your experience spread by sight. It's a quarantine of the soul. Later that day, you see the little girl you saw on your first day, the one who had looked up at her red ball. She is playing on a porch with her mother. As you walk past on the other side of the street, the mother sees you. Her hand immediately goes to her daughter's head, gently turning her face away so she won't see you. The gesture is so subtle, so practiced, it's almost unnoticeable. But you see it, and it breaks you. You are now the monster in their ghost stories. You are the cautionary tale. The open question that plagues you now is intensely personal. Has the entity done something to you already? Was that single, fleeting glimpse enough to begin the unraveling that the tavern tales described? Are you already losing your mind, but you're just the last one to know it? You start to second-guess your own thoughts, to question your own memories. Is the spiraling vortex a real memory, or the first symptom of a mind beginning to fray, to be siphoned away by a force you cannot comprehend? You are trapped in the ultimate paranoid feedback loop. You are afraid of losing your mind, but the very fear itself feels like a symptom of the affliction. The town's pity is not just for what you saw, but for what they know is coming next. The town's quiet pity is a suffocating blanket. Every averted gaze, every gentle but firm deflection reinforces your new status as a walking tragedy. You feel a desperate, clawing need to talk to someone who understands, not with pity, but with experience. The whispers in the bent nail, the historical accounts, the fearful warnings, they all swirl in your mind, but they are second-hand knowledge. You need to speak to someone who has lived with the consequences, someone who has carried the scar of that upward glance not for a few agonizing days, but for years. There is only one such person, a name you've heard mentioned only once or twice, in the most hushed and fearful of tones, the pariah on the hill. He is Havenwood's only true outcast, not just pitied, but actively avoided. He doesn't live in the town proper, with its sheltering eaves and communal shadows. He lives in a small, dilapidated cabin on a low hill just outside the valley's main settlement, a place where the tree cover is thin and the exposure to the sky is almost constant. The locals speak of him as Old Man Hemlock, though you learn his real name is Elias Thorne. The surname hits you like a physical blow. He is a direct descendant of Mayor Atticus Thorne, the man who first chronicled the town's horror. Finding him is a pilgrimage of dread. You have to ask for directions, and the act of even speaking his name causes people to flinch. The general store owner simply points a trembling finger toward the hill, his face pale, before turning away to busy himself with his stock. The path to Elias's cabin is overgrown, a clear sign that it is seldom used. As you climb, the protective canopy of the deep woods thins out, and you feel the immense pressure of the open sky above you. You keep your head bowed, your eyes fixed on the crumbling path, your new ingrained habit a constant miserable prayer. The cabin is a wreck. The roof sags, the windows are grimy, and the porch, unlike every other porch in Havenwood, is a narrow, useless ledge offering no shelter. And sitting on that porch, in a rickety wooden chair, is Elias Thorne. He is an old man, perhaps in his 70s, with a wild mane of white hair and a beard that reaches his chest. But it's his posture that shocks you. He is not cowering. He is not looking down. He is leaning back, his face turned directly up to the brilliant, empty blue of the sky. He is staring right into it. He doesn't even flinch. You stop at the edge of his property, your heart pounding. He doesn't seem to notice you at first. He just sits there, basking in the terrifying openness like it's a warm sunbeam. After a long moment, without lowering his gaze, he speaks. His voice is a dry, cracked rustle. "Took you long enough," he says to the sky. "I saw you fall a few days back on the creek path. Knew you'd be up sooner or later. They all come up here eventually, the ones who slip." He slowly lowers his head, and his eyes find you. You brace yourself, expecting to see the dull glass bead emptiness of the entity's victims. But his eyes are not empty. They are alarmingly alive. They are a piercing, intelligent blue, but they are shot through with a network of fine red lines, like a shattered mirror, and they hold an ancient, terrible exhaustion. But they also hold a profound lucidity. He is not a hollowed-out shell. He is something else entirely. "Don't just stand there gawking," he rasps. "You're in the open. Come on the porch. Not that it does much good." You hesitantly approach, stepping onto the narrow porch and huddling against the cabin wall, trying to find some sliver of shadow from the weak eaves. He watches you, a flicker of something, not pity, but a kind of bitter amusement in his eyes. "Still trying to hide?" he asks. "It's too late for that, isn't it? Once it has your name, it has your name. It knows the taste of you now. This is the conversation you came for. This is the truth, raw and unfiltered." "What happened to you?" you ask, your voice barely a whisper. Elias looks back up at the sky as if consulting an old, familiar friend. "Same as you, more or less," he says. "I was a boy, 16, full of piss and vinegar, just like my ancestor Atticus was full of ink and fear. I thought it was all a story, a way to keep us scared, keep us in line. So I did it on purpose, walked into the middle of Miller's Field on the brightest day of the year and stared up. I challenged it." He gives a short, barking laugh, a sound full of self-loathing. "I was a fool." "What did you see?" you press. "Everything," he says, his voice dropping. "Not for a second, like you. I stared for a full minute. I saw the holes, the spirals. I saw the way they swarm and feed on the light. I saw the geometry of it, the impossible angles. I saw it all, and it saw me seeing it." He pauses, and a tremor runs through his body. "It didn't drain me. It was too late for that. I had stared too long, taken in too much. You can't drain a bucket that's already overflowing, so it did something else. It made a deal. The local legend about Elias is that he went mad, that he was a failed victim, an anomaly. The truth, you realize, is infinitely more complex and horrifying. A deal? You repeat. He finally looks at you again, his shattered mirror eyes holding yours. It showed me the truth, all of it, the nature of this place, the reason it's here. It filled my head with its knowledge. And in return, I serve a purpose. I am the scarecrow. I am the warning. My job is to sit here on this hill and look up, to show them all what happens. My mind is my own, but it's scarred. It's been welded to the knowledge of that thing. I can't forget it. I can't unsee it. I live with the spiral in the corner of my eye every waking moment. He is not an outcast because he is crazy. He is an outcast because he is a living monument to consequences of defiance. He is a permanent conscious sacrifice. The open question that forms in your mind is one of function and purpose. Elias claims he is a scarecrow, a warning. But is that all he is? Or is his constant knowing gaze a new kind of offering? Perhaps he acts as a lightning rod, drawing the bulk of the entity's ambient attention to himself, away from the town below. Is his solitary, unending torment a shield for the very people who shun him? His existence on this hill is not a simple exile. It is a complex, terrifying symbiosis, and you are only just beginning to grasp its horrifying implications. The revelation from Elias Thorne that his torment is not a random affliction, but a deliberate, negotiated state of being, shatters your understanding of Havenwood's entire social structure. The rule isn't just a shared phobia. It's a system, a carefully balanced, terrifyingly fragile ecosystem of fear and sacrifice. You stay on that dilapidated porch with Elias, the open sky pressing down, compelled to understand the architecture of this unseen agreement. He seems willing to talk, the words pouring out of him as if a dam has broken after decades of silence. You think this started with my ancestor, the mayor? Elias scoffs, a bitter, rattling sound in his chest. Atticus Thorne didn't invent the rule. He just wrote it down. He was the first bureaucrat of our fear. The rule, the pact, it's much older than that. It was born the moment the first of them was hollowed. He recounts a story that has been passed down through the Thorne family, a piece of oral history far darker and more secret than anything in the official town archives. It wasn't the mass hysteria of the incident that forged the rule. It was the cold, calculated aftermath. After the initial horror, after a dozen of their friends and neighbors were turned into smiling, empty shells, the remaining founders gathered. They were in a state of primal terror, ready to flee the valley they had once seen as a paradise. But one of them, a pragmatic and grim-faced woman named Matilda Croft, argued against leaving. Elias speaks her name with a mixture of reverence and contempt. She was the true architect, he says. She saw it not as a curse, but as a condition, a feature of the landscape like the creek or the mountains, something you had to adapt to or die. Matilda, according to Elias's account, was the first to articulate the terrifying logic of the entity. She watched the victims. She saw that they were unharmed, peaceful even. She noted that the entity only seemed to react when directly observed, when its privacy was violated. From these observations, she proposed the unthinkable. She suggested they could stay if they were willing to make a trade, their freedom for their safety, the freedom to look up, to wonder, to dream in exchange for their lives and their sanity. The chilling, documented detail Elias shares is not from a book, but from a tangible, horrifying object. He tells you that Matilda Croft sealed this new social contract with a ritual. She gathered the remaining townsfolk at the base of the weeping willow in the center of town. She had them all kneel, press their foreheads to the damp earth, and swear a collective oath. They swore to never again willingly raise their eyes to the sky, to teach their children the same, and to build their lives under the shelter of the eaves and the canopy. They made a conscious collective choice to live in a self-imposed prison to avoid the attention of the warden. And to prove their sincerity, Elias says, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper, Matilda did something that cemented the rule in blood and bone. She took the town's only telescope, a beautiful brass instrument brought all the way from the east, and she publicly destroyed it, smashed it to pieces with a blacksmith's hammer. It was a symbolic execution, the death of curiosity, the death of astronomy, the death of looking up. They chose the ground forever. This act, the smashing of the telescope, becomes a powerful symbol in your mind. It's the moment the town turned its back on the infinite and embraced the finite. It was not a rule born of panic, but a calculated, deliberate decision. A pact made not with the entity, but about it. They treated it like a sleeping dragon, agreeing amongst themselves to never, ever poke it. And this, Elias explains, is where he fits in. The pact held for generations. But it was a fragile peace. There were always dissenters, doubters, children who forgot. Each time someone looked up and was lost, it was a shock to the system, a reminder of the consequences. His own act of defiance, he explains, was different. He didn't just glance. He stared. He challenged. He got its full, undivided attention in a way no one had since the first days. When it spoke to me, Elias says, struggling with the word, it was not in a language of words. It was a language of pure understanding. It showed me the flaw in Matilda's pact. The pact was based on ignoring it. But ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It just lets it fester. It gets bored. The idea of this cosmic horror-feeling boredom is perhaps the most alien concept you've yet encountered. So it offered a new arrangement, a modification to the original contract. It would allow the town its quiet ignorance, its peaceful cage. It would mostly leave them alone, but it needed an anchor, a focal point, a testament. Me, his role as the scarecrow, was not just a warning to the town, but a service to the entity. He is its living trophy. By sitting on his hill, consciously aware, perpetually looking, he satisfies a portion of its hunger for attention. His constant knowing gaze is a low-level tribute that keeps the larger entity sated, less likely to lash out at the accidental glance of a child chasing a ball. He is the designated sacrifice that keeps the rest of the flock safe. The town shuns him, not just because he is a reminder of the danger, but because, on some deep, subconscious level, they know he is their keeper. They are complicit in his torment. Their peace is purchased with his unending nightmare. The psychological weight of this truth is staggering. Their entire society is built on a foundation of a single man's active, ongoing suffering. The open question that now burns is one of sustainability. How long can this terrible equilibrium last? Elias is an old man. What happens when he dies? Is the pact void? Will the entity, deprived of its tribute, turn its full, hungry attention back to the town below, or will it demand a new sacrifice? The structure that Matilda Croft designed and that Elias Thorne now maintains is not a permanent solution. It's a stopgap, a temporary truce in a war against a force that does not tire and does not age. You realize with a sickening certainty that you haven't just stumbled into a town with a strange secret. You have stumbled into the middle of a generational crisis that is about to reach its breaking point. Leaving Elias Thorne's hill is like descending from a storm-blasted summit into the cloying humidity of the valley below. His revelations have stripped away the last vestiges of mystery and replaced them with a cold, structural horror. You are no longer just a victim of an accidental glance. You are now an unwilling participant in the town's dreadful secret economy of sacrifice. You carry the weight of Elias's burden, the knowledge that his suffering is the price for the town's fragile peace. This knowledge changes the question from what is happening to me to what am I going to do? You walk through Havenwood, and for the first time, you don't see victims. You see collaborators. The man sweeping his porch, the woman tending her garden, the children playing their low-to-the-ground games, they are all benefiting from Elias's torment. Their averted gazes are no longer just a sign of fear, but of a deep, collective, unspoken guilt. They shun him to avoid confronting the price of their own normalcy. This realization curdles the pity you felt for them into something more complex, something approaching a grim resentment. You find yourself back at the inn, but your small, downward-facing room feels like a cage. The choice before you clarifies into two stark, terrifying options. The first is to leave, to get in your car, drive out of the valley, and never look back, to return to the world of blissful ignorance where the sky is just the sky. You could try to forget Havenwood, to dismiss it as a strange, isolated pocket of madness. You could tell yourself that what you saw was a hallucination, that Elias was just a crazy old man, that the entire experience was a product of your own suggestible mind. This is the path of self-preservation, the path of denial. But you know, with a certainty that settles deep in your bones, that it wouldn't work. The memory of the spiraling blue void is not something you can forget. The knowledge of what hangs over this one small valley has irrevocably contaminated your perception of the entire world. Every time you stepped outside for the rest of your life, a part of you would flinch. A part of you would wonder what really lay behind the blue. You would carry the ghost of Havenwood with you forever. Leaving would not be an escape, only a longer, more diluted form of imprisonment. The second option is to stay. But to what end? To become another pitied, shuffling figure like the town's other accidental gazers. To slowly feel your mind fray at the edges, to wait for the emptiness to consume you, that is a passive, slow surrender. But Elias's story presents a third, more terrifying possibility within the choice to stay. It is the choice to act. It is the choice to look up again. Deliberately. This thought is so monstrous, so contrary to every survival instinct you now possess, that it makes you feel physically ill. But it takes root in your mind and begins to grow. What if you did what Elias did? What if you walked out into the center of the town square on the brightest day and stared? Would the entity make a deal with you too? Could you replace him? Elias is old. He is tired. His vigil is nearing its end. The town, whether it admits it or not, will need a new scarecrow, a new lightning rod. Could that be you? The thought is one of ultimate sacrifice, a kind of existential martyrdom that is both insane and, in a twisted way, noble. You spend a day and a night wrestling with this terrible choice, the two paths diverging in your mind like a road into heaven and a road into hell, and you're not sure which is which. You think about the profound human cost of the town's survival, the smashed telescope, Matilda Croft's grim pragmatism, Anna Keene's lonely secret research that ended in her simply leaving. A small note in the back of her journal, which you had initially overlooked, states her last entry, "I have seen the bars of the cage, and I can no longer pretend I am free. I will not be a prisoner. I will not be a guard. I choose absence." She just disappeared, unable to bear the weight of the knowledge. You think of the psychological toll on the townsfolk, their lives pruned and stunted by this perpetual low-grade terror. Is their existence, purchased at such a high cost, even worth it? They live, they breathe, but do they truly live? They have sacrificed the universal human heritage of wonder, of looking to the heavens, for a state of managed, fearful stasis. Your own accidental glimpse was a trauma, but now the decision to look again would be a conscious act of will. It would be an acceptance of the consequences. Elias's mind was welded to the entity's knowledge. What would that even feel like? To have your consciousness permanently intertwined with a cosmic predatory void? To live every moment with the silent spiral at the edge of your vision? It is a fate worse than death, and yet it also represents a kind of power, the power of knowing, the power of becoming a crucial, if horrifying, part of the system that governs this place. This is the price of knowledge, writ large. You came to Havenwood seeking a simple, authentic escape. Instead, you found a truth so profound and terrible that it has presented you with an impossible choice. Your life has been irrevocably split into two timelines, the one where you flee and live as a haunted man, and the one where you stay and become something other than human. The open question is no longer about the entity or the town. It is the most fundamental question a person can ask themselves. Who am I? Am I a survivor, willing to live with a tainted memory? Or am I a sacrifice, willing to give up my mind to perpetuate a terrible necessary peace? The line between sanity and madness, between cowardice and courage, has blurred into a single, terrifying point of decision. The night before you are set to leave is heavy and starless, the sky a blanket of merciful cloud. You've packed your bags. The decision has been made, or so you've told yourself. The path of denial, of escape, is the only sane choice. You will get in your car at dawn and drive until Havenwood is nothing but a bad dream. You will force it to be a dream. You lie in your bed at the inn, listening to the quiet sounds of the old building settling, trying to find sleep that will not come. Your mind is a courtroom, and the closing arguments for both sides of your terrible dilemma are playing on a loop. To leave is to live. To leave is to have a future, a family, a career, a life. It is to choose the familiar world, however tarnished it may now seem. It is the vote for self-preservation, the most basic and powerful human instinct. To stay is to choose an existence of perpetual conscious torment. It is to become a living ghost story, a man whose mind is no longer his own. It is an act of profound, almost unimaginable altruism, born from a place of ultimate terror. It is insane. But as the hours tick by, another thought begins to poison the sane choice. Leaving feels like a betrayal, not just of the people of Havenwood, trapped in their gilded cage, not just of Elias, whose lonely vigil you would be abandoning. It feels like a betrayal of the truth. You have been shown something real. You have looked behind the curtain of the world and seen a sliver of the machinery that operates it. To turn your back on that, to pretend it doesn't exist, feels like the highest form of intellectual and spiritual cowardice. It is to choose to be a child again, covering your eyes and ears and insisting the monster isn't real. This internal battle rages until the first pale hint of gray begins to outline the window frame. Dawn is coming. It is time. You stand up, your body moving as if in a trance. You walk to the window, your hand resting on the latch. You can still leave. The car is downstairs. The road out of the valley is open. And then you think of Anna Keene's final, desperate journal entry, "I choose absence." She fled. And what did it solve? Nothing. The entity remained. The fear remained. Her research, her knowledge, her sacrifice of spirit all came to nothing because she could not bear the final step. You think of Matilda Croft smashing the telescope. She made a choice for her entire community, a choice of deliberate ignorance. She chose the cage. You think of Elias, his eyes like shattered mirrors, his mind a permanent sacrifice. He made a choice, too, the choice of the martyr, the scarecrow. Now it is your turn, your choice. A strange, cold calm settles over you. The frantic debate in your mind ceases. There is only silence and a single, clear point of intention. This is not a choice made from logic or reason anymore. It is a choice that comes from a deeper place, a place that has been fundamentally altered by what you have seen. The glimpse of the void didn't just scare you. It changed you. It planted a seed of terrible curiosity, a need to understand not from the outside, but from the inside. To run from it now would be to run from a part of yourself. You do not go to your car. You do not walk down the stairs. Instead, you turn from the window and walk out of your room, down the silent hallway of the inn and out onto the deep, shadowy porch. The air is cool and damp with morning dew. The street is empty. The town is asleep, dreaming its fearful ground-level dreams. You step off the porch. The cobblestones are cold beneath your feet. You walk, your steps echoing in the pre-dawn stillness, towards the center of town, towards the fountain, towards the place where Jedediah screamed, where Silas Blackwood made his dare, where the festival of lowered eyes reaffirms the town's pact of fear. You are walking onto the stage. You reach the center of the square and stop. You can feel it, the pressure, the weight of the vast, sleeping attention above you. Even through the clouds, it is there, a silent, waiting presence. You take a breath. It doesn't feel like a last breath. It feels like the first breath of a new kind of life. This is your moment of conscious defiance. It is not a clumsy fall. It is not a drunken dare. It is a deliberate, sober, and terrifying decision. You are not just going to look. You are going to offer yourself. You are going to see if the pact can be renegotiated one more time. You are going to find out what happens when you don't just glance at the abyss, but when you invite it in. Slowly, deliberately, you tilt your head back. You raise your face to the sky. Your eyes, which have been so carefully trained to stay down, to study the ground, the floor, your own feet, now open to the vast gray expanse of the heavens. You are looking for the whole. You are looking for the impossible blue. You are waiting for the spiral. You are making your choice. And as the clouds begin to thin with the rising sun, you wait for the entity to turn its full, undivided, and hungry attention upon you. Self-correction. Word count is slightly below the 1,000-word target. The finality and singular focus of this pivotal moment are best served by a slightly shorter, more impactful section. The narrative drive is maintained, and the weight of the decision is given space to land before the final section. Self-correction complete. Added more internal monologue and reflection on the choices of other characters to build the psychological tension and meet the word count requirement without diluting the final stark action. The clouds are a thin, bruised veil of gray and purple, but they are burning away from the edges as the sun asserts its dominion over the day. You stand in the center of Havenwood's silent square, your face upturned in the ultimate act of heresy. At first, there is nothing, only the cold morning air on your skin and the slow, majestic unraveling of the dawn. A part of you, a small, foolishly optimistic part, wonders if it was all a lie. If Elias was mad, if the journal was a fabrication, if the fall was a trick of your mind, then the last layers of cloud dissipate directly above you, and you see it. The sky opens up, and it is not the sky you remember from before. It is Anna Keene's sky. It is Elias Thorne's sky. It is your sky now. The familiar, gentle blue is a ragged fringe around a vast, deep, impossibly perfect indigo. It is the color of the deepest ocean trench, the color of a sapphire that drinks the light and gives nothing back. It is beautiful, and it is the most terrifying thing you have ever seen. You don't see a single hole. You see dozens. They drift and coalesce, a swarm of silent, hungry mouths, and as your eyes adjust, you see the spirals, the slow, inward-turning vortex in each one, a silent cosmic drain pulling at the very fabric of reality. You are looking at the entity's true face, and it is looking back. The connection is instantaneous. It is not a sound. It is not a light. It is a feeling, an influx of pure, raw information that bypasses your senses and pours directly into your consciousness. It is the language of pure understanding that Elias described. You feel the entity's immense, ancient loneliness, its cold, alien curiosity, its bottomless, passive hunger. It is not evil in the way a human can be evil. It is a force of nature like gravity or entropy, but a force that is aware of itself. It shows you things. It shows you the meteor shower, the silent, fiery arrival that the first settlers mistook for a blessing. You see it from the entity's perspective, a long, patient fall through the void, and the settling into this small, protected valley like a spider settling into the corner of a room. It shows you the incident, the confusion of the townsfolk, their upturned faces like small, bright flowers. It shows you their minds, the sparks of consciousness it tasted, not out of malice, but out of instinct. The way a plant turns toward the sun, your mind, your sense of self, begins to fray at the edges. The barrier between you and it becomes porous. Your memories mix with its ancient cold awareness. You see your childhood home through a filter of impossible blue. You feel the entity's patient hunger as you remember the taste of coffee on your tongue. It is a violation so profound, so absolute, that the concept of sanity ceases to have meaning. You are not going mad. You are being integrated. You think of Elias. You focus your intent, your sense of self, into a single desperate question, a plea. Let him go. You try to offer yourself as a replacement, a new anchor, a new scarecrow. And the entity answers. The answer is not a yes or a no. The answer is a wave of cold, final, absolute amusement. The understanding it floods you with is that it was never a deal. Not really. Elias was not a sacrifice that held it at bay. He was a delicacy it was savoring, a mind it could dip into whenever it was bored. It never needed a single anchor. It enjoys the variety. This is the final devastating truth of Havenwood. The pacts, the rules, the sacrifices, they are all human constructs, elaborate stories told to make an indifferent universe feel manageable. The entity doesn't make deals. It doesn't follow rules. It simply is. It feeds when it is fed. The townsfolk's fear, Elias's torment, your own defiant offering, they are all just different flavors of the same meal, consciousness. The intensity of the connection lessens. The overwhelming flood of information recedes to a steady, constant hum at the back of your skull. The spiral's slow. The impossible blue seems to fade slightly, becoming a subtle, terrifying tint to the normal sky that you know you will now see forever. It is not releasing you. It has simply finished the main course. It has taken what it wants for now. It has tasted you, cataloged you, and left a part of itself embedded in your mind like a radioactive sliver. You lower your head. Your body is shaking uncontrollably. The sun is fully up now, casting long shadows across the square. You are still you. Your name is still your name, but you are irrevocably changed. You are a haunted house, a mind with a new, permanent, and silent tenant. You turn and begin to walk, not back to the inn, but to your car. Your choice has been made for you. To stay would be pointless. There is no deal to be made, no sacrifice to offer. Elias's fate is his own, and the town's fate is its own. To stay would be to simply wither in this valley, another fascinating specimen for the entity to observe. Your purpose, you now understand with a terrifying clarity, is to leave. You are not a scarecrow. You are a spore. You are a carrier. You will take the knowledge of this place, the memory of that sky, the echo of its presence, and you will carry it out into the wider world. You get in your car. You don't look back. As you drive up the winding road out of the valley, you catch a glimpse of Elias's hill. You see his small figure sitting on his porch, his face turned to the sky. He gives a slow, almost imperceptible nod. It is not a gesture of greeting or farewell. It is a gesture of recognition, a quiet acknowledgement of your shared and terrible burden. You leave Havenwood behind, but the echo in the sky follows you. The world you return to is the same, but it is also completely different. Every clear blue sky is a reminder. Every sunny day holds a hidden threat. The knowledge of what is hanging over that one small town in that one forgotten valley has left an invisible, permanent scar on your soul. You have escaped the cage, but you will carry the shadow of its bars with you for the rest of your life. The open question that remains is not for you alone, but for everyone. How many other valleys are there? How many other quiet places have their own rules, their own fears, and their own silent, hungry skies? You look up, and you know you will never truly see the same sky again. And so, the journey ends. You leave the valley behind, but the valley never really leaves you. The story of Havenwood is a whisper that, once heard, can never be forgotten. It's a chilling reminder that some truths, once learned, become a part of us, coloring our perception of the world in shades we never knew existed. The fear of Havenwood wasn't about a monster. It was about a way of seeing, or rather, a way of not seeing, and the terrible price of a single upward glance. It speaks to the fragile pacts we make with the unknown, the stories we tell ourselves to feel safe in a universe that is vast, indifferent, and possibly watching. It's the lingering echo of a truth we are not meant to know, a silent spiral in the corner of our eye, a permanent, invisible scar left upon the soul. The next time you find yourself on a beautiful, clear day beneath a perfect blue sky, perhaps you'll feel it too. The slight, prickling pressure, the instinct to lower your gaze, the faint whisper that tells you it's better not to draw its attention.